Good afternoon, everyone. It's lovely to be back presenting another financial wellbeing webinar. And today we're going to be focusing on money and caring, and in particular, what carers need to know. So we're going to look at how being a carer can impact on your own finances, as well as looking at the options and costs for long-term care as well for either yourself or a loved one. So just to briefly introduce myself, obviously it's already been done, but for those who haven't joined one of these sessions before, I'm Amy Staines and I'm the Senior Financial Education Manager at Better with Money. And Better with Money is an independent provider of financial education. So we provide support in the workplace to help bring money matters to life and hopefully help to reduce any financial stress you might be feeling, as well as helping you to build upon your financial resilience. There's also just a few housekeeping points for me to go through before we start. The first being that today's webinar is providing information only. So I won't be providing any sort of financial advice today, but rather this is about giving you the tools and knowledge to help you take control of your money. Now, it's also important to note that Better with Money isn't connected to any of the companies or websites that I mentioned today, and we also have no products to sell. So where I do mention perhaps companies, organisations, websites along the way, it's because we genuinely believe they offer good services which you can take advantage of, rather than because we have any sort of financial incentive to do so. So let's get started then and have a look at the agenda. So I'm going to start by looking at a few facts and figures around carers in the UK and also the impact caring has on people financially. We'll then go through the state benefits available for carers before moving on to exploring some of the long-term care options and the government support available as well, whether that be helping to plan for yourself in the future or indeed for a loved one who may need care now. And then, as Fiona said, we'll wrap up with Q&A. Now, just before we move on to the facts and figures, I do just want to say that it's very easy to forget that even if you're helping someone by popping into their home a couple of times a week, perhaps to make them dinner, supporting them with medical appointments, these things all count as caring responsibilities. So this isn't just someone who's doing a full-time caring role, but actually this isn't about children in isolation, but actually being a carer incorporates many different things, relates to many different people. And it's for this reason that people often don't realise that they are indeed classed as a carer. So as we go through the content today, it's just worth recognising this, trying to keep an open mind as to whether you are a carer in some capacity, and if there is therefore some support that you might be able to access. So I want to start just by defining what a carer actually is according to Carers UK. So their definition is a carer is a person of any age who provides unpaid care and support to a family member, friend or neighbour who's disabled, has a long-term condition or illness, or who needs extra help as they grow older. So as you can see from that as well, this does encompass a lot of different circumstances and people as well. So just wanted to set the scene with that. But if we move on now to look at the facts and figures relating to caring. So the Carers Week report for 2024 was entitled No Choice But to Care, and there were some really staggering statistics contained within this. Now, the report estimates, based on UK population data, that 7 million people are currently providing unpaid care. 9.1 million have provided unpaid care in the past, and so there are 16.1 million people who are current or former unpaid carers in the UK. Now, the report goes on to say that 62% of those who are currently providing care or those who have previously provided unpaid care said they had no choice in taking on the role due to a lack of other available care options. So that actually equates to around 10 million people. And it was those aged 45 to 54 who were most likely to state that they did have no choice about taking on a caring role. And often these people are referred to as the sandwich generation. So people who not only have dependent children, perhaps still in full-time education, but who are also caring for parents, either financially or perhaps taking time to help them manage their day-to-day activities. Now, the report goes on to state that women are more likely to provide care, and I did read another statistic around this which suggests that 60% of unpaid carers are indeed women. But regardless of gender, the Carers Week report outlines the impact on carers' finances and savings, their job, ability to work, and their physical and mental health as well. And I think it's also worth highlighting that in August 2023, only 1.4 million people were claiming carers allowance. And so this is one of the benefits available to carers. We're going to talk about this in more detail in a minute, but this is clearly a minor proportion of the 7 million people that are currently providing unpaid care in the UK. So we can see from these statistics that being a carer can have a really huge impact on many different parts of our lives. But let's now move on to looking specifically at those financial impacts. And Carers UK talks about the triple threat to carers' finances. So, number one refers to the direct costs of caring. And there's some research by Phoenix Insight which showed that 2 in 3 carers actually regularly use their own money to pay for the care, with costs averaging £114 a month. Now, number two is about carers working fewer hours to fit in the caring responsibilities or giving up work altogether. Now, hundreds of people leave work every day to take on full-time unpaid caring roles. And according to that Carers Week report 2024, 49% of unpaid carers who had given up work or reduced their working hours had actually seen their income reduced by over £1,000 per month. Now, it is worth noting on this point that flexible and hybrid working is helping with this to some extent, and 53% of unpaid carers who are employees said that flexible working does help them balance their work with their caring responsibilities, but many are still unable to secure sufficient flexibility to carry out caring responsibilities alongside a job. And then point number three, this refers to the other benefits that individuals lose when they do leave a job. Because when you leave a job, it's not just salary you lose, it's also benefits like pension contributions, life assurance, sick pay. And looking to the future, carers will probably end up with less pension due to lower contributions over a period of time. So, as a result of these three things, unpaid carers have become particularly vulnerable to the rising cost of living due to that limited ability to earn an income. And just a couple of stats from Carers Trust. 21% of households with an adult carer are actually living on less than the average UK income. And in the Carers Trust 2022 survey of unpaid carers, they found that 31% of those who responded had had to cut back on food, 22% had not been able to pay bills on time, and 47% said they were struggling to make ends meet. And unfortunately, these statistics are perhaps unsurprising when you see that the main carers benefit, which is carers allowance. So as I said, it's currently £81.90 per week. And this is provided you're caring for a minimum of 35 hours a week. And it's actually the lowest benefit of its kind and equates to around £2.34 an hour, which is £9.10 below the national living wage for someone who is 21 or over. So, as you can see, having been an unpaid carer or being an unpaid carer now can have a significant financial impact. And so, the aim of today's session is to give you an understanding of some of the support available, as well as the information you need to prepare financially for you or someone else's future long-term care needs. So, with that in mind, let's take a look at the state benefits that are available for carers. And the first one, which I've obviously already mentioned, is carers allowance. So, this currently pays £81.90 per week, provided you spend at least 35 hours per week caring for someone. Now, you don't have to be living with them, you don't have to be related to the person you care for to receive it, but it's worth noting that if you're caring for two people, so both of your parents, for example, you wouldn't be paid more for the extra person. Now, you're only eligible for carers allowance if you earn less than £151 per week after deductions. And it's also worth noting that claiming it could affect the benefits of the person you care for. So, for example, they may stop getting any severe disability premium they receive. Now, for a full rundown of the eligibility, it's worth taking a look at the gov.uk website. And the rules do differ slightly between England and Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. So make sure you're looking at the rules for the country that you're in. Now, the next one is carers credit. So this is when you receive a national insurance credit towards state benefits if you look after someone for more than 20 hours a week and you don't receive carers allowance. So why might you need this? Well, at the moment, you have to earn at least £242 per week throughout the tax year in order to get one national insurance credit towards your state pension. Now, you need 35 credits for the full state pension, and this is currently paying around £11,500 a year. So, if you've given up work to look after someone, or perhaps working reduced hours, you may actually fall below that £242 a week threshold. So, then it's important to claim this carer's credit to maintain your entitlement to the state pension. And your income, your savings, your investments won't affect your eligibility for carer's credit. Now, the third one on the slide is carers premium. So you may be eligible for up to £198.31 a month if you get means tested benefits like universal credit and you provide care for at least 35 hours a week for someone who gets a health or disability related benefit. And the last one on the slide is disability living allowance. So this is a benefit to help with the extra costs of looking after a child under the age of 16 who has additional needs. Now, there are two components to this one. So there's a care component and a mobility component, each of which are broken down into lower, middle, or higher. Now, if we take all of that into account, this can provide up to £184.30 per week. Again, slightly different rules between the different countries. So, for example, in Scotland, this is actually known as the Child Disability Payment. So there are those four on the slide, but how do you know if you're eligible for any of these? So the easiest way is to go to the Money Helper website and complete their benefit calculator. So this will tell you the benefits you may be eligible for based on your circumstances, and then you'd go on to apply for the benefits via the gov.uk website. Now, if you're a carer, you can also apply for a carer's assessment, and this is designed to see what might make your life easier. So it might provide someone to take over caring whilst you take a break, gym memberships to relieve stress, help with taxi fares if you don't drive, training and advice on caring for someone as well. And these carers assessments are free, and anyone over 18 can ask for one by contacting Adult Social Services at your local council. And if you're a parent or carer of a child, you should contact the Children with Disabilities Department. And for more information on that in particular, the NHS website does have some really good information on carers assessments, so perhaps worth having a look on there. So there are the state benefits for carers. And we've obviously already heard previously that 62% of those who are currently providing or those who have previously provided unpaid care said they had no choice in taking on that role due to a lack of other options. So I did just want to spend a couple of minutes talking about some of the other long-term care options we have access to in the UK. And even if you're not currently caring for someone else, it's worth being aware of these for ourselves because it's actually quite likely that most of us at some point in our lives will need some form of care as we get older. And as we've previously said, this could be anything from having someone accompany you to medical appointments, through to full-time nursing care if you had perhaps a serious medical condition or mobility issues. So let's just go through these and we'll start at the bottom of the slide. So the first one is about care by a family member or friend. And in most cases, this will involve someone you know providing ongoing, practical, personal, emotional support, and it tends to be suitable for someone with low level needs. So visiting someone in their home, or perhaps living with someone if they have around the clock needs. Now, it's very difficult to put a cost on this one as it does really depend on the individual circumstances. So, for instance, your home may need to be adapted to accommodate your needs, things like handrails, ramps, easy access shower facilities, and costs for these could range from a few pounds through to thousands. Now, something else to think about on this point is if you were being cared for by a family member or friend, would you be able to afford to pay that person for their travel, for their time, or would they need to provide one of these unpaid caring roles? And If it is unpaid, it's then about thinking of that impact on their own family and their own finances. So would it mean they have to give up paid work? Would it therefore affect their pension savings, their future income for themselves, for example? So there are no easy answers with this one, but all too often people do assume that family might take on this role without considering those financial implications. So it's just something to consider. Now, the next option is domiciliary care, so also known as home care. So this is home visits from a professional carer. So can be helpful in situations where that person wants to continue living independently without having to depend on family support, but having visits from healthcare professionals. And it can range from daily check-ins through to nurses coming in to administer medicine, change dressings, doing observations, and so on. Now, this type of professional care is generally charged at an hourly rate, and during the day, it can be anywhere between £20 and £35 an hour, depending on where you live. If you need someone to stay overnight, this can be upwards of £100 per night. So may need to pay more for weekends, bank holidays, and you may also need to factor in those home modifications as well, as you're still going to be living in a home environment. Now, the next one is living care. So perhaps if you've got around the clock needs, this is where you might consider living care by a professional carer. So you can still have some independence because you're living in your own home. Friends and family will be around you, but you have that added companionship and professional care of that living carer. So it may take away some of the stress that comes with moving properties, will require an additional bedroom for the carer. And this type of care can really be suitable for someone with kind of mid-level needs. And the cost of this is an average of £1,200 per week, so £1,200 per week. And you may also need to pay for additional care whilst that carer takes a break or has a holiday, for example. Also, we'll need to think about whether you're providing food within that cost or if that's additional. And also, if you're employing them, you may need to think about pension provisions and holiday pay too. So, a few additional costs that may come into a living care scenario. Now, the next step is assisted living. You might have seen more and more of these complexes cropping up in your local area, as I certainly have. So this is where you either buy or rent a self-contained flat or bungalow within a residential care complex. So allows you to live independently, but there are staff and nurses on call 24 hours a day that can support in case of emergencies or accidents. So there's the advantage of access to communal facilities, things like hairdressers often, shops, eateries, and it's also intended to create a community of friends on your doorstep. Now, again, the cost will vary. It depends on a number of factors, including location, accommodation size, the services on offer, whether that property is purchased or rented, and where the property is purchased, there are usually ongoing service charges for those assisted living facilities. Now, where the property is rented, small homes and standard facilities can be around the £500 a week mark. Larger properties with more services may be anywhere between £1,000 and £2,000 per week. And the average is around £1,200 a week across the UK, and it may or may not include nursing care. So quite a few things to think about with this one, but can be quite a good option for someone that wants to maintain a level of independence whilst having access to those facilities on their doorstep. Now, the last option on the slide is care homes. And in the UK, there are over 17,000 care homes with over 400,000 residents. So this is where you move to a communal residence, you have your own room and you're cared for around the clock by healthcare professionals. So the cost will include all meals, organised activities, you'll be registered at the doctors, all appointments and medicines will be arranged by the staff. There will be arranged transport to hospitals and appointments as well. And if you have a more serious medical condition, some care homes will provide nursing care as well as those residential facilities. Now, again, the cost of care homes does vary quite dramatically, but according to carehome.co.uk, it says the average cost of residential care is £1,160 a week and nursing care costs £1,410 a week. So lots to think about on this slide, but they're kind of the common long-term care options available. And There clearly is a financial commitment associated with these. And so now I do just want to look at government support available. But before we think about government support, I just want to mention local authority funding. So we've mentioned that there are 400,000 people in care homes across the UK, and of those 400,000, around half of these are self-funders, so they pay for that care themselves, and the other half receive local authority funding. Now, which category you fall into will depend on where you live in the UK and also the level of assets that you have. So that includes things like investments, savings, any equity you might have in a property. Now, in order to find out what local authority support you may be entitled to, your local authority will carry out a care needs assessment. So this will see what level of care you require, whether it's residential or nursing, and it will also include a financial assessment as well. And once that's been done, the local council should give you a written record of their decision of what you will have to pay and what they will pay, and also how they've calculated it. Now, there are some great articles on this on carehome.co.uk, all around funding. And it's also worth knowing that many care homes themselves do actually hold webinars about these different funding options, and they often invite you to sign up to their mailing lists. So that's very briefly around the local authority funding side if you or a loved one goes into residential care. But let's now look at the government support available to help with your care needs, whichever route you choose. So for anyone state pension age or above, needing care and support on a daily basis, they're eligible for attendance allowance. So available in all countries across the UK, the amount you get is based on your needs, not the help you actually receive. Now, there's a lower rate if you need help during the day or night, and the higher rate is if you need help for both or if you're terminally ill. And the rate of the higher rate this year is £108.55 per week. So this is tax free, it's not means tested, so it doesn't matter what other income or savings you have. And claiming it also won't affect other benefits you receive. And claiming it could even help you to get benefits like pension credit or a council tax reduction. Now, the attendance allowance is also available if you're self-funding residential care too, apart from in Scotland, as everyone over the age of 65 in Scotland is entitled to free personal care if the local authority has assessed them as needing it. So that's attendance allowance. The next one is the personal independence payment, or PIP. And this can be claimed by someone who's under state pension age and has a long-term illness or disability that makes life more difficult or means you need to reduce working hours. And there are two parts to the PIP. So there's the daily living component and the mobility component as well. And this is assessed by the DWP, and the maximum you'll get from both parts this tax year is £184.30 per week. And just like attendance allowance, this is tax-free and it's not means tested. Now, if we move on to the third and fourth circles, so we're back to benefits here for someone specifically in residential care. So in England and Wales and Northern Ireland, even if a person is self-funded, they may be able to get help with their nursing care costs through either funded nursing care or continuing healthcare funding. Now, these don't apply in Scotland, again, as everyone aged 65 or over will receive that free personal and nursing care if they've been assessed as needing it. But it's really worth having a look at both of these two options to see if they are applicable. Now, the last option here, or the last circle on the slide, is state pension and other benefits. Now, if you're over state pension age, you should be eligible for state pension, but you need to claim this, so it won't be paid automatically. The maximum amount, just to reiterate, for this year is around £11,500 per year. But I just want to finish off by talking about some of the other considerations relating to money when you're caring for someone, because these are particularly important. So often as a carer, whether you're simply popping in to see someone each week or you're looking after them on a more regular basis, you will probably be involved in some way with their finances. So helping them to pay their bills, making sure they're allocating monthly money wisely, making sure they put aside money for hobbies and activities. So this is about thinking about budgeting, making the use of resources available. And I just wanted to highlight that the Better with Money website has lots of useful tools and resources to help with budgeting and saving. So please do go on there if you need some extra support with that. And a part of this process will also involve looking at those benefits you're entitled to. So again, just wanted to direct you to a couple of websites here. So Citizens Advice and the gov.uk websites could be really helpful when looking at what benefits you might be able to claim and how to claim those. Now, the next part you may also be involved in is developing a care plan between the person you care for and their healthcare professionals or social services. So this care plan documents what that person's care needs are, who should provide the care, the wishes of the person receiving the care, and the costs involved as well. So that might be something that you are involved with. So I've linked on the slide there to Age UK for more information. And the final point is around powers of attorney, because many companies will require the person you're caring for to have a power of attorney in place to allow you to manage their finances on their behalf. And again, just wanted to signpost to the Money Helper website there. Now, just to finish off, as I say, conscious of time, but there's also loads of resources on here just to support you and help you. And I just want to finish off by reiterating that, you may not have previously considered that you are actually a carer, but often people are carers and they don't realise. And caring can have a massive emotional and psychological impact as well as that financial impact. So this isn't just necessarily about the financial side, but also providing you with some tools and resources that can support you and your mental health, and providing that broader support to your more kind of overall well-being. So some really useful websites here. And of course, you do have access to the ICE Benevolent Fund and support network resources as well. So lots of content there. Hopefully, you can all hear me okay now, and happy to go to questions. Fiona.
Brilliant, that's great. Thank you, Amy. Yes, we've had a couple of questions in. If I hold power of attorney for someone, will I become liable for their debt?
So this is a really good question, and the simple answer is no. So a property and financial affairs lasting power of attorney can give you the authority to deal with and make decisions on someone else's debts, but it doesn't mean you're liable for them. So as an attorney, you're not acting as a guarantor. And in fact, you should actually only pay debts from that person's own resources. And if those resources do fall short, that's when you may want to get debt advice on their behalf. Now, I just want to mention, of course, if you were, for example, a joint borrower or perhaps a guarantor on a debt, then you would be liable in those circumstances. But unless that's the case, no, holding a power of attorney doesn't mean you're liable for someone's debt.
Super, thank you. Another question we've had in is, as the next of kin, am I obliged to pay for my parents' care home fees if they can't pay for them themselves?
Yeah, another really good question. And I think this is something that, lots of people are concerned about, but legally you are not obliged to pay for your family members' fees. So whether that's your parents, that's a spouse, a blood relative, a relative by law, you're not obliged to pay for those. There are a couple of caveats, so 2 points. So the first is if you have joint assets, and the second is if you've signed a contract. So if we think about joint assets, if you did have joint assets with a care home resident, then those assets will be considered as 50% owned by that person. So just worth being mindful of that fact when kind of care home fees and who's obliged to pay are calculated. Joint assets will be taken into account, saying that if you jointly own a property, their share of it will only be taken into account if if you don't live there anymore. So a property is treated slightly differently. So that's the joint assets. And then the other one is thinking about a contract. So if you, as a family member, have signed a contract with a care home where you formally agreed to pay those fees or pay a top-up fee, you are kind of legally bound by that. but you only have to do that if you want to. So just a couple of things to think about, but in general, no, unless you wanted to and had signed up to do that, you are not obliged to pay for parents' care home fees.